Okay, so I want to ask you guys to do something a little bit weird because, we do things that are a little bit weird sometimes. And this might be weird for some of you. Some of you, this might be the best part of your morning because I want to ask you to use your imagination for a bit. So I want you just to close your eyes so that you can block out the distractions, okay? And I want you just to imagine, well, first off, I just want you to take a deep breath because sometimes I just think we need to just cleanse out the stuff. So take another deep breath. Just breathe in and breathe out. And just using your imagination, I just want you to imagine that Jesus is sitting right across from you. And I want you to imagine him looking into your eyes. And I want you to hear him saying this to you. Are you tired? Worn out? Burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn how to live freely and lightly. You can open your eyes. I don't know about you. I think I've said this before, but this is my favorite invitation from Jesus. I want you to look at it again. Since you heard it, let's just look at it. Can you just imagine Jesus looking at you and saying, are you tired? Are you worn out? To which we would be like, yes. I look down here and I see Alex holding the little baby, which in the little carrier looks a little bit like an alien coming out of him. I told him this morning. But if you were a parent, do you remember back when you had a child that was this young and how you just never got any sleep and how challenging it was? And then as you get older, you have different things that wear you out and that wear you down. This week, I get a little emotional. My middle son moved to Colorado this week, and it's awesome. We're excited, but when he drove, my middle son has a 1990 Mazda Miata, and it was his dream car, but as you can do the math, that car is 35 years old, and we were supposed to ship the car on a truck across the country, and he was going to fly. They tried to up the cost by twice the amount 3 hours before the shipping was supposed to happen. So he decides as a 22-year-old that he's going to drive 1,523 miles across the country in his Mazda Miata with no air conditioning, right? And so he does, right? But he posts a picture, sends us a picture from the Colorado state line, where he's crossing over the border. And it's just emotional, like this. We are wore out emotionally, Liz and I, from this exciting but also kind of challenging thing that we're experiencing as parents. And I think all of us can say, yes, Jesus, that's us. But look at his invitation. He says, come to me. Get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I love that. He's inviting us to recovery. He tells us that he will show us how to take a real rest. Keep that in mind. We're going to come back to that in a little bit. He invites us into a relationship with him where we walk with him and where we work with him and where we learn how to do life from how Jesus does life. And then he promises us that he's not going to lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on us. He's not going to put anything on us that he is not willing to carry with us. And then he tells us that if we keep company with him, that we will learn how to live freely and lightly. Isn't that the way we want to live? Don't you just want to go through life free and light, not heavy and weighed down and burdens? I just love this invitation. And I think that if you were honest, this is what you want as well, right? I would argue that what Jesus offers here, is what all of us desperately need. We desperately need real rest. We desperately need to figure out how to make it through life freely and lightly. Well, I want you to keep this invitation in mind over the next few minutes, because for the past few weeks, we've been talking about how God has created us to live with a healthy rhythm of work and rest. Work and rest should be a regular part of our lives. We were created to work, yes, but we were not created to work all the time. we were also created to rest. We need rest. And the practice of the Sabbath, which we've been talking about, which is a weird word for many of us who grew up in church. And if you didn't grow up in church, it might be an even weirder word. But really, Sabbath is just a 24-hour period where we stop from our ordinary work. We stop from those things that drain us and suck the life out of us so that we can do things that are delightful, so that we can do things that are restful, and so that we can do things that are worshipful. The Sabbath is this command that we are given to obey by God, but it's also a gift that we are given by God that we need to receive. And as we're going to see today, it's this gift that we desperately need because all of us need to figure out how to experience real rest. Last week we talked about what it means to stop from all of our ordinary work. And if you missed last week, I encourage you to go online and listen to that because I think it's important for us if we're going to figure out how to put together a plan to practice the Sabbath, which is what the goal is for you over the next few weeks, for you to put together a personalized plan with you and your family about how you can put this into practice. I can't dictate to you how you are to practice this habit of Sabbath. You have to figure that out on your own because you have unique gifts and you have a unique bent. What's restful for you might not be restful for me. What's delightful for you might not be delightful for me, right? So you've got to do some work. You've got to put in some effort to figure out a plan for practicing the Sabbath. But last week we talked about stopping from our work. But once we stop from our work, the Sabbath invites us to rest, to take a breath, and just chill for a little bit. Look with me at Genesis chapter 2. I love this. It says, but by the seventh day, this is right after the creation story, by the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy. That is, he set it apart as different from the other days, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. That little verb rested is actually the Hebrew word Shabbat. God Shabbated. It's where we get our word Sabbath from. God's Sabbath. He rested on the Sabbath, which I think is fascinating because we're talking about God here. And I'm not sure that God actually needs to rest, right? I mean, it's not like God's like, that was exhausting. I need a break. You guys leave me alone for a little bit and come back to me tomorrow, right? It's not like God needed rest. But what God needed to do was model for us something that we need, something that he embedded in our DNA when he created the world, this rhythm of work and rest. And so it tells us that God Sabbathed, he rested. So the question I want us to think through, or want you specifically to think through today, is this: what would it look like for you to rest? What would it look like for you to rest? I think that it's important that we look at or answering this question from 4 different angles. And I think it begins that first off, there is physical rest. Physical rest. See, on the Sabbath, we get to rest physically. On the Sabbath, we can sleep. We are free to take naps. We're free to sit on the couch and lie around and lounge, to which some of you that sounds like torture and others of you that sounds like heaven on earth, right? Mark and Liz right here would hate to lounge around like that. That would be horrible for them. But myself and Ann, we would love to just sit around for a little bit, wouldn't we? But on the Sabbath, we are free to rest physically, whatever that looks like for you. And most of us, we do this already without even thinking about it, without even thinking about practicing the Sabbath at all, because we sleep late on Saturday, right? We sleep a little bit later on the weekend. And the reason why we sleep a little bit later is because we're trying to catch up, right? We realize that we missed something during the week and we need a little bit more of that on the weekend, right? And that problem, this need for physical rest, is magnified by the modern world that we live in. I mean, think about how distracted we are by our electronic devices. And you can even forget about the modern electronic devices that we have and just think about how the light bulb in and of itself has totally transformed the amount of rest that we get. I don't know if you know this or not. I've said this before, but before the invention of the light bulb, the average American slept 10 to 11 hours every night. I hear you, Gary. You just want to get rid of your electricity now. Call Duke Power and say we're done, you know? But can you imagine? Before the light bulb, we got a lot more sleep. It's incredible. That's why I was thinking about that and thinking back to the aftermath of Hurricane Helene last year, when we were out without electricity for like a week. We slept more. It was more uncomfortable because it was hot as you know what in our houses, but we got more rest because we didn't have anything to keep us up. There was no TV to watch. Our phones were dead. There was no light to read by. I mean, with my vision, I can't even read by candlelight because my eyes don't work, if I don't have enough light. But it's just amazing how much we need physical rest. The Sabbath is a day for physical rest. It is a day for sleep. I want to show you a couple of verses that might help that you should meditate on about this. They both involve sleep. The first one is Psalm 3:5. It says, I lay down and slept, yet I woke up in safety, for the Lord was watching over me. I love that. That when you sleep, when I sleep, when we sleep, the Lord watches over us. He takes care of us. See, when we're sleeping, we aren't really doing anything productive, right? We are not completing tasks that are on our to-do list. We are not doing our job. We might dream about our job, but we are allowing ourselves to just let go and let God take care of things. Let me show you another verse out of Psalm 4. In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, O Lord, will keep me safe. The reason why I love this verse is because when we sleep, we're telling God, even if we're not thinking about it or not, that we trust you with our world. Because we are not in control of things when we are asleep, right? We are trusting God. We can lie down and sleep, for God will keep us safe. See, Sabbath is a gift that God has given us to allow time for our bodies to rest physically. So what would it look like for you to rest physically? Like I said, for some of you, that's taking a nap, lounging around on the couch, just sitting around reading a book. Others of you, it actually might be something physical, but it's different from the other physical stuff that you do. What would it look like for you to get some physical rest? Second, not only do we need to look at this from a physical angle, Sabbath also provides an opportunity for us to get some mental rest. We talked about this last week when we were talking about stopping our work. I said that we also need to stop thinking about work, because when we think about work, our body has the same response as if we were actually working. And so we need to discipline ourselves to figure out how to stop thinking about work, to give our mind a mental rest. On Sabbath, we have the opportunity, the privilege, the gift of setting aside all of the hard work of problem solving and overthinking and future planning and whatever else that drains you mentally. You can just let go of that on the Sabbath. You know why you can let go of that? Because God's got it. He's in control. And on the Sabbath, you can say, God, I'm going to come back to that tomorrow, but right now I'm just not going to think about that. I'm just going to focus on you. Here's a great verse to remind ourselves from something Peter said. He said, give all your worries and cares to God, for he cares about you. I love that. Give all of your worries and cares to God because he cares about you. On Sabbath, we have an opportunity when we start to think about things that drain us mentally to say, God, I'm just going to give this to you. I'm going to turn this over to you. And just do that over and over again. I know that oftentimes I'll be thinking about something I need to say, or I'm thinking about something that's going on with one of you guys, or something else that's stressful and draining. And this verse is a great reminder to me that I can cast all of my cares on God. I can give all of my worries to God. I can give all of my concerns to God. Why? Because we have a God who cares for us and who's promised to take care of us. Sabbath is a day for mental rest. Now, I know some of you don't really think very much, so you don't need that. But the rest of us, the Sabbath is a day to rest mentally. So what would it look like for you to get some mental rest? Can I tell you one really simple, practical thing for those of us that are attached to our devices, specifically our emails? A mentally restful thing would be to not check email on the Sabbath. That could provide you some rest. So that's a little side note. We'll get on to the rest of the sermon. Okay, so next, Sabbath provides an opportunity for emotional rest. See, on the Sabbath, we can rest from our worry and from our anxiety and for whatever seems to be weighing us down emotionally. We can set it aside for 24 hours. It's not that we ignore it. It's just we're going to set it aside for 24 hours. And we're just going to rest emotionally. We're going to give our emotions and our feelings to God. There's this author, Abraham Joshua Heschel, who said this: "It is a sin to be sad on the Sabbath." I don't really agree with that, but his point is that the Sabbath is a day for joy. It's a day to curate joy. It's a day for delight, right? I think that, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that next week, but the truth is the Sabbath is an opportunity for us to rest emotionally. Why? Because we can trust God to take care of all that's going on inside of us that is causing us stress and worry and anxiety. We can just release that to him. A verse that's very helpful to me is one we've looked at many, many times, but out of Philippians chapter 4, that says this: "Don't worry about anything," which sounds challenging, right? Don't worry about anything. We're like, how can I not do that, right? Well, Paul tells you, instead, pray about everything. And here's what you should pray. Tell God what you need and thank him for what he's done. It's as simple as that. God, I need this. Thanks for doing this. God, I need this. Thanks for doing this. The Sabbath is an incredible day to say, God, I need this, and I thank you for this. God, will you take care of this? I need you in this, and thank you for this thing. So thank you for all he's done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. I think all of us want peace, right? Well, it comes when we just release those things that are weighing us down emotionally. The Sabbath is a day for emotional rest. What would it look like for you to rest your emotions on the Sabbath? That may be the most difficult thing for you to figure out because we can't control our feelings, right? But we can work in such a way that we don't allow our feelings to control us. And the Sabbath is an opportunity for emotional rest. What would it look like for you to just have some emotional rest on Sabbath? And then finally, the Sabbath is a day for spiritual rest, which seems a bit odd, right? But the Sabbath is a day to remind ourselves that we can just be with God, that we don't have to do anything to earn God's love and his favor, but instead we can just enjoy God's presence, that we can just enjoy being and stop doing. I think related to this are some of those spiritual disciplines that are a regular part of our life that are difficult for us. See, I think if you practice spiritual habits or spiritual disciplines at all, some things come very naturally to you. Like they're just really easy. Like being in silence and solitude is very easy for me. It's natural. It's not a struggle at all for me. Reading my Bible daily is not a struggle for me. It's not difficult. Prayer is most of the time not really that much of a struggle for me. But being with some of you in community, that is a drain for me. Why? Because I'm an introvert, right? And so being hospitable, practicing the discipline of hospitality, it's draining for me. The Sabbath is a day when I can hit pause on those disciplines and those habits that are draining and difficult and instead rejoice and enjoy those habits that are life-giving for me. I can lean more into those and more away from the others. It's not that the others aren't important. I'll come back to them tomorrow, right? But I can lean into those things that are the easiest for me. Why? Because Jesus invites us to live freely and lightly, to come to him for real rest. Remember what he said in his invitation. Are you tired and worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me, and you'll recover your life. That's what the Sabbath is supposed to be about, a day of recovery, a day of healing. You cannot have recovery and healing without coming to Jesus, the one who brings recovery and who brings healing. He says, I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me and watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn how to live freely and lightly. So the question is, what would it look like for you to experience spiritual rest? Another thing that I read about was Orthodox Jews, the way they flesh out this whole idea of spiritual rest on the Sabbath is that they do not do any kind of intercessory prayer on the Sabbath. You know, intercessory prayer is it's praying for other people. And the reason why they don't do that is because that type of prayer is work. If you've ever prayed for someone, it is work to pray for someone, especially if you're praying, deeply for someone. And not only that is that kind of prayer work, it's also guided by want. And so they don't ask God for anything on the Sabbath. Now, I'm not saying you have to do that, but I think that's fascinating, right? Because they want to experience spiritual rest on the Sabbath. And Jesus invites us into that type of spiritual rest. And really, that's the point of spiritual rest is reminding ourselves, like I said already, that we don't have to do anything to earn God's favor. We don't have to do anything to earn God's love. But then instead, we can just be with the God who loves us. We can just enjoy his presence. It's another reason why I think our worship gathering is so important as part of our spiritual rest and Sabbath discipline, because we need this experience with other people to be a part of how God works in us, to do the healing that he wants to do in us as we seek him for that real rest that he is offering. But all of this really leads us back to the recurrent theme of the Sabbath. Really, the reason why I think God gave us the gift of the Sabbath and commanded us to practice the Sabbath in the first place. And that is because the Sabbath is really just a day for us to trust God. And life is all about trusting God. I told this to somebody a couple of weeks ago, but the thing that God has said to me more than anything else over my entire life is this: do you trust me? Do you trust me? All of life is an invitation to trust God. And the Sabbath is a weekly opportunity to give God an entire day and say, God, I trust you. There's this book called The Rest of God by Mark Buchanan, and it's a whole book about the Sabbath, and he says this. I love this quote. He says, Sabbath is about trust. Sabbath is about turning over to God all those things, our money, our work, our status, our reputations, our plans, our projects, that we're otherwise tempted to hold tight in our own closed fists, hold on to for dear life. On the Sabbath, we release the illusion of control to God. I love that. We let God be God. We let God run the universe without us for a day. And guess what? The universe does just fine. I love that. Rest, I think, is one of the ultimate acts of trust. Remember those verses I showed you in the Psalm about sleep? When we sleep, we are not in control at all. And Sabbath is a form of sleep as an act of trust. See, to rest, to sleep, to stop overthinking, to stop worrying, to have the courage to turn off your phone or at least set it aside for part of the day, and to take a day just to do nothing or to contribute nothing, to produce nothing, and just to enjoy rest and sleep and just to enjoy being present with those that are in your life. That is an act of trust. To say to God, God, you are God and I'm not. You are in control and I am not. You are sovereign and in control. I am not sovereign at all. And I trust you. John Mark Comer said, many people claim to believe in the sovereignty of God, but they never practice it. Sabbath is a way where you put your money where your mouth is. And you say to God, I trust you. I trust you with my life. The rhythm of work and rest that is built into our DNA that God gave us when he created us. It is built on this posture of trust that we can rest because God is a trustworthy God. I know many of you use the Lectio 365 app. If you don't, I highly recommend that app. But every Sunday, they do a special Sabbath Lectio. And this verse was on last week's and this week's Sabbath Lectio. It's out of Hebrews, and it says this. So there is a special rest waiting for the people of God. I love that sentence. We could just leave there. For all who have entered into God's rest has rested from their labors, just as God did after creating the world. So let us do our best to enter that rest. Let us do our best to enter that rest. I think these verses are talking about more than rest on the Sabbath. They're talking about the rest that comes from having a relationship with God where we don't have to earn our salvation, right? But I also think that they are talking partly about the Sabbath, about this 24-hour period that we set aside and we stop from our work and we stop from those things that drain us and suck the life out of us. And we rest and we trust God. See, you and I, we are invited to experience this type of rest when we practice the Sabbath. So I'll come back to the question that I shared with you at the beginning that I want you to figure out. This is your homework this week. What would it look like for you to rest? What would it look like for you to rest physically? What would it look like for you to rest mentally? What would it look like for you to rest emotionally? What would it look like for you to rest spiritually? And remember, as you answer this, Jesus gave us some filters to kind of guide our answer to these questions that we've been looking at. The filters that He's given us are this. Is it good for you and others? Is it life-giving? Is it healing? Is it restorative? For instance, as you think through what would it look like for you to rest, you have to figure out what rest is for you. Like what, after you've done it, do you feel like, man, I feel so rested now? You've got to do some self-assessment to figure out what is restful for you, but you also have to talk with the people that you live with. You can't just make these decisions on your own if you're in a family, you're in a unit, right? Talk it over with your spouse. It's funny, last week after church, Liz and I got home and we were eating our avocado toast because that's what we do on Sunday after. We do it on Friday for lunch and we do that on Sunday for lunch. We have avocado toast and we're eating our avocado toast and she pulls out a piece of paper and a pencil and says, okay, she starts quizzing me. No lie. And saying, so what's restful for you? And what is draining for you? What sucks the life out of you? And so she's got this list of things, that are restful for us, that are draining for us. And we're trying to take away those things in our life that are draining and add more of those things into our life on the Sabbath that are restful. I encourage you, when you have your avocado toast today, that you would have that discussion with your spouse or with your kids, because the Sabbath is an opportunity to do good for you and to do good for the people that are in your life. You got to use that filter. You also have to use the filter of, is it life-giving? Like, what type of rest is life-giving for you? For me, sometimes it is taking a nap. Most of the time, though, it's being outside and being active. Yesterday was such a beautiful day to be outside. Even though it was a little bit of mist, we walked the dogs twice in the mist because it was so comfortable outside. I felt like we should have church outside today because you can breathe and it's incredible, right? For me, that is restful. Even going hiking, even cutting the grass is restful for me because it's life-giving for me. And then you need to make sure that your rest is restorative and healing, because I think we can rest in certain ways and then still feel drained afterwards. For instance, some of you I know love to binge watch things on Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever subscription service you use, right? Which may be restful, but you have to ask yourself, is that restorative and healing for you? Like after you're done watching 12 episodes of some show that you're going to forget about tomorrow, do you feel restored and healed on the inside? If the answer is no, save that for later. Don't do that on the Sabbath. Find things that are restful in such a way that they restore your soul and your body, that they're healing for your soul and for your body. By the way, I think one of the most draining and life-sucking things that we do is doom scroll through Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and whatever other social media thing that is of the month that's out there today, right? Those things just can suck the life out of us. Liz and I, we've made a commitment. We don't look at Facebook on the Sabbath. We only look at Instagram because I only follow 6 people on Instagram, my boys and their girlfriends. And I want to see if they post a picture so I can celebrate about it, But we try and avoid doom scrolling because that's draining. So back to the question. What would it look like for you to rest? So here's what I want you to do. I want you to close your eyes. And I don't want you just to think about that question. I want you to actually ask God. Invite him into this decision-making process. God, what would it look like for me to rest? God, from your perspective, what would be restful for me on the Sabbath? What do I need to do to rest? What do I need to stop doing so I can rest? And then maybe you can just say, hey, God, because if you're like me, God, I really need some real rest. So I want to accept your invitation, Jesus. I come to you for that real rest. Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for the gift of Sabbath that provides a day where we can rest. And I recognize that most of us are either overworked or overstressed or overworried or overburdened, and we just don't know how to rest very well. So would you teach us how to rest? Would you help us to put in the work that we need to put in to figuring out what rest looks like for us? Because God, we want to accept this gift that you've given us. Actually, Jesus, we want to accept the invitation that you offer in Matthew 11. And so we come to you to find real rest. Help us to figure out how to incorporate rest into our Sabbath. Give us the courage to actually practice a Sabbath, to not just talk about it, but to be obedient to you, because we know that we need you to do some healing work in us. We need you to do some restorative work in us. We need you to teach us how to live in the unforced rhythms of grace so that we can live freely and lightly. We need that, God, so we come to you. Once again, I do thank you for this gift of Sabbath. Teach us how to stop and teach us how to rest. I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.